You know that feeling when you look at your bank account and wonder where all your money actually went. You could have sworn you made decent income this month, but somehow the numbers don't add up. Well, here's something that might surprise you. The difference between people who build wealth and people who stay broke isn't always about how much money they earn. It's about the small, seemingly insignificant habits that silently drain their bank account every single day. My name is Lenny, and I've spent way too much time analyzing the financial behaviors of thousands of people. I've noticed patterns that most personal finance experts completely miss because they're too busy talking about investing and budgeting. What I found is that there are specific habits that are so common, so normalized in our society, that most people don't even realize they're destroying their financial future. If you've ever wondered why you feel like you're making decent money, but still living paycheck to paycheck, this video is going to change how you see your own financial behavior. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because understanding these habits could literally be worth thousands of dollars in your future wealth. Let's start with the first habit that's quietly making you poor, and it's something almost everyone does. The habit of not tracking where your money actually goes. Most people think budgeting is boring, restrictive, and unnecessary if they're not completely broke. They tell themselves that they have a general sense of their spending, but they never actually write it down or check their statements closely. Here's what happens when you don't track your money. You become blind to the actual patterns in your spending behavior. You might think you only eat out twice a week. Tadarite granji effable twice a motive. But when you actually look at your bank statement, you realize it's more like 5 times a week. You might assume you spend $30 on coffee per month, but the real number is closer to $130. The reason this habit makes you poor is psychological. When you don't track your spending, you can't see the problem, so you can't fix it. Instead, you continue the same behaviors month after month, year after year, watching your wealth gradually disappear without understanding why. I know someone who swore they were careful with money, but they never actually checked their statements. Pridevatsen kraptik skrinod free my tans, but wall of money tans pridevatsen come. When they finally decided to track everything for 30 days, they discovered they were spending over $400 per month on subscription services they forgot they even had. That's nearly $5,000 per year just evaporating into services they never use. The second habit that quietly makes you poor is what I call the convenience tax. This is when you consistently choose convenience over value. You buy the expensive version of everything because it's easier, faster, or more convenient even though cheaper alternatives exist. You pay for food delivery instead of cooking at home, not because it's only marginally more expensive, but because it's convenient. You buy coffee from fancy cafes every morning instead of making it at home. Not because you can't afford it, but because it's just easier. You subscribe to premium streaming services because you don't want to deal with ads even though you only watch one of them regularly. You use your car to drive 2 blocks to the store instead of walking because it's more convenient. Each individual decision seems small and reasonable in the moment, but the cumulative effect is devastating. The convenience tax is insidious because it doesn't feel like you're spending money irresponsibly. It feels like you're just living your life. But the truth is that convenience has a price, and most people are willing to pay that price without even realizing they're doing it. If you could eliminate just half of the convenience purchases you make in a month, you could probably save between $300 and $500. That's between $3,000 and $6,000 per year. That's being stolen from your future self simply because you chose the convenient option. The third habit is emotional spending, and this one hits differently for different people. Some people spend money when they're sad, some when they're happy, some when they're bored, and some when they're stressed about something completely unrelated to shopping. Emotional spending is dangerous because it completely disconnects the act of purchasing from rational decision making. You tell yourself that buying something will make you feel better, and in the moment it kinda does. That dopamine hit from a new purchase is real. But then a few days later, the dopamine fades, the guilt sets in, and you're stuck with a purchase you don't actually need or want. The problem with emotional spending is that it often targets the exact moment when your willpower is lowest. You've had a bad day at work, so you reward yourself with an expensive dinner. You're stressed about bills, so you buy something online to make yourself feel better. You're bored on a Saturday night, so you impulsively purchase something you saw on social media. The habit of emotional spending creates a vicious cycle because it prevents you from dealing with the actual emotions that are driving the behavior. Instead of addressing why you're sad, stressed, or bored, you're just throwing money at the problem and temporarily masking the emotion. I know this one intimately because I used to do it all the time. The number of unnecessary purchases I made to cope with stress or sadness is honestly embarrassing. What I eventually realized is that every single emotional purchase was stealing money from my future self and making my present self feel worse long term. The fourth habit that quietly makes you poor is what I call lazy bill negotiation. Most people set up their bills and then just let them stay the same forever, never questioning whether they're getting a good deal. Your internet bill, your phone bill, your car insurance, your home insurance, your cable service. These are all things that you can potentially negotiate or find better rates for. But how many people actually do this? Almost nobody. You probably pay whatever they tell you to pay without ever considering that you could call and ask for a better rate or switch to a competitor. The thing about these bills is that companies are literally counting on your laziness. They know that the vast majority of people won't take the time to shop around, so they gradually increase your rates, knowing that most customers won't even notice or won't bother to do anything about it. You probably pay whatever they tell you to pay without ever considering that you could call and ask for a better rate or switch to a competitor. The thing about these bills is that companies are literally counting on your laziness. They know that the vast majority of people won't take the time to shop around, so they gradually increase your rates, knowing that most customers won't even notice or won't bother to do anything about it. The fifth habit that makes you poor is buying things to project an image instead of buying things you actually need. This is the idea that you purchase things not because they provide value to your life, but because you want other people to think you have a certain lifestyle or status. You buy expensive clothes from designer brands, not because they're better quality, but because of the label. You upgrade your car, not because your current car is unreliable, but because you want people to think you're successful. You buy expensive fitness equipment that you never use because you want people to see it in your home and think you're health conscious. You spend money on experiences specifically so you can post them on social media and create a particular image. Here's what's insidious about this habit. It's incredibly common, which means it's socially normalized and almost invisible. Everyone around you is doing it, so it just seems like normal adult behavior. But when you actually step back and think about it, you're essentially paying money so that other people will think certain things about you. The irony is that most people don't care as much as you think they do, and the ones who do care are generally not the people you should be trying to impress anyway. The sixth habit is not educating yourself about money, which leads to making consistently poor financial decisions. This is the habit of just assuming you understand how money works without actually learning about it. Most people graduate from high school and college without ever taking a course on personal finance, investing, taxes, or debt management. So they just figure things out as they go, making expensive mistakes that could have been easily avoided with basic financial knowledge. You might not understand compound interest, so you don't start saving early enough. You might not understand how credit scores work, so you damage yours without realizing it. You might not understand the power of investing, so you keep all your money in a checking account where it's losing value to inflation. You might not understand how to negotiate salary, so you accept whatever offer is given to you. Each of these decisions is costing you money, sometimes a lot of money, simply because you never took the time to educate yourself. The beautiful thing is that financial education is incredibly accessible and often free or very cheap. You can learn everything you need to know from books, podcasts, YouTube videos, and courses, but most people would rather just stumble through life making expensive mistakes than spend a few hours learning the basics. The seventh habit is impulse buying without any friction or delay between wanting something and actually purchasing it. Our modern world has made impulse buying incredibly easy. You see something on social media and click a button and it's on its way to your house. You're scrolling through a website, see something cool, and buy it immediately while the dopamine is still flowing. Most of the time, if you forced yourself to wait even 24 hours before making a purchase, you'd realize you don't actually want it. But that friction doesn't exist anymore. The purchase is complete before your rational brain even has a chance to evaluate whether it's a good idea. What makes this habit particularly destructive is that it combines with several other habits we've already talked about. It's convenient, so you do it without thinking. It projects an image, so you convince yourself it's necessary. It triggers dopamine, so you feel good in the moment. But then you're stuck with purchases you regret, and the money is already gone. The eighth habit that quietly makes you poor is avoiding difficult financial conversations. Most people would rather just let financial problems fester than actually talk about them. You notice that you're overspending but never actually sit down and have a conversation with yourself or your partner about it. You know you need to ask for a raise but avoid it because the conversation feels uncomfortable. You're unhappy with a service provider but never call to complain or ask for a refund because confrontation feels hard. You discover a mistake on a bill but don't bother calling because you can't be bothered. These avoidance behaviors are costing you money constantly, but because you're not directly seeing the money leave your account, it feels less real. The truth is that financial growth requires being willing to have difficult conversations. You need to talk to yourself about your spending habits. You need to talk to employers about your salary. You need to talk to service providers about your bills. You need to talk to loved ones about money. But most people would rather just avoid these conversations and let their financial situations slowly deteriorate. The ninth habit is not diversifying your income sources. Most people put all of their financial eggs in one basket. They have one job, and if that job goes away, they're in serious trouble. They never consider building alternative income sources or developing skills that could generate additional money. They think side hustles are something other people do, not something they could realistically do themselves. The problem with relying on a single income source is that it makes you vulnerable. If you lose your job, your entire financial situation collapses. If your industry goes through downsizing, you're directly affected. If your company decides to cut your hours or reduce your salary, you have no buffer. But people who have diversified income streams have much more financial stability. Even if their main job situation changes, they have other sources of income to fall back on. They're less stressed, less vulnerable, and ultimately more financially secure. The 10th and final habit that quietly makes you poor is not having any financial goals or vision for your future. Most people just drift through life financially, reacting to whatever happens rather than proactively planning. They don't know how much they want to save, when they want to save it by, or what they're saving for. Without clear goals, you have no direction for your money. You just spend it as it comes. People with financial goals are dramatically more likely to actually build wealth because they have a target to aim for. They make intentional decisions about their money instead of just going with the flow. They say no to purchases that don't align with their goals and yes to opportunities that do. The beautiful thing is that you don't need to have perfectly figured out goals. You just need to know generally where you want your money to go. Maybe you want to have $3,000 saved in 6 months. Maybe you want to eliminate your credit card debt by next year. Maybe you want to be able to take an unpaid month off work in the next 2 years. Whatever your goals are, having them completely changes your financial behavior. So here's what I want you to understand about all of these habits. They're not character flaws and they're not indicators that you're bad with money. They're just habits that you picked up from growing up in a culture where financial education is almost completely absent. The good news is that habits can be changed. You can start tracking your spending today. You can commit to eliminating convenience purchases this week. You can have a difficult financial conversation this month. You can start a side hustle this quarter. You can set financial goals this year. These aren't massive, life-changing tasks. They're just small shifts in behavior that compound over time into real financial transformation. The person you become while breaking these habits is infinitely more valuable than any amount of money saved.